Is the lore of the Little Waagh any good in patch 6.0.5? Now that there's a Night Goblin Big Boss, let's look at the Shaman a little. You don't need a great Shaman running a Goblin-specific army build to make the Little Waagh available, meaning you can use it in Orc-heavy hitter armies too, and for factions you'd never think about it. Also, you get them from the same building as the Orc Shaman basically for free, so all the better. I know a lot of people still don't like them, but they have their uses, and the Great Shaman has his uses. But anyway, let's look at the details. The passive for casting spells is Sneaky Stealing, a 25-second duration debuff to enemy Winds of Magic recharge to the tune of -40%. That's an anti-arcane conduit worth of debuff. This might not mean much if it was a lore without low-cost, spammable spells. It is such a lore. Sneaky Stabbin' is 4 Winds of Magic, no overcast version, single target 200 meters, 40-second duration, 28-second cooldown. This single target, self or ally, gives plus 24 melee attack and plus 25% armor piercing melee damage, and armor piercing only for that duration. This is the theme of the lore. You get advantages and shortcomings. But I can think of plenty of things in the roster that could really use melee attack and armor piercing. Starting with trolls. Not ending with trolls, but definitely starting with them. Vindictive Glare is a Gaze of Nagash-esque homing missile skill, and this entire family has been improved fairly lately. For 5 wins, you get 5 missiles, 250 meter range, 29-second cooldown, 19 magical damage direct, 80 explosive indirect. The former is 20% armor piercing, the latter is 31%. So what about Overcast? It's 7 wins, you don't get more missiles, you also don't get longer cooldown, but what you do get is 72% armor piercing for direct, 68% armor piercing for the explosive damage, so it's much, much better at chewing through armor. Itchy Nuisance costs 8 Winds of Magic, no overcast version, 200 meters, 35 meter radius, 25-second duration, 44-second cooldown, affects all enemies in the radius, and causes -24 melee attack and -30% to base damage and base damage only. That limitation notwithstanding, this is an enormously useful spell for limiting incoming melee damage. Gork'll Fix It again has no overcast version, 6 wins, 200 meter range, 35 meter radius, 24-second duration, 43-second cooldown, all enemies in radius affected. The effects are -45% speed, -45% charging speed, and -20% charge bonus. In other words, it's the worst nightmare for Batronian Knights and other glory hounds. Moreover, as I noted in my Ragnarok Spider Flinger video, differing sources of slow will stack with each other so long as they are actually different sources. This means Sticky Webs and Dazed can stack with Gork'll Fix It, theoretically. Well, you'll probably only get 2 at most, plus Poison from something ranged, but it's still a lot. Night Shroud is where it gets really insane. 8 wins, 200 meter range, 35 meter radius, duration 60 seconds, 48-second cooldown, and all allies in that radius get Stalk, and the superior version of Stalk, Unspottable. This makes it really hard for the enemy to see a unit unless it's really close, and will make a unit to vanish from sight that very moment, if I recall its use correctly from concealment bombs. Overcast increases the radius to 55 meters. Area Effect Stalk can lead to some truly evil things, and like I said at the start, now you can slap it on boar boys and, well, even giants, to reduce the time they're getting shot at, which matters for giants. Overcast version costs 14 wins. Finally, the Little Waagh has a Vortex spell, Curse of the Bad Moon. Aside from looking gnarly, 11 wins, 14 damage per second, that's all magical and 0 armor piercing, 22-second duration, 70 meter radius, 3 meters per second movement, and when they say random, they kinda mean it. But it does move differently than the old version did, so it actually acts like a Vortex spell. Range is 150 meters, and cooldown is 47 seconds. Thing is, being touched by it at all inflicts Dynasty Curse, which itself lasts 22 seconds from the moment the bad touch occurs. Victims are -24 melee defense, speed -25%, and armor -30. It's not just the fact it does those things that should matter, it's the fact Death Hags are prominent in the faction, and layering Soul Blight on top of this would mean armor -60. Wait, there's an Overcast version. This version is 16 wins, 44 seconds duration, which is mad, 2 meters per second movement, which means movement is more controllable. I mean, it's still changing directions, but it's moving slower. What's equally insane is that Dynasty Curse now lasts 44 seconds too, and can thus long outlive the Vortex itself. Just imagine unleashing this in a siege area where it ping-pongs off the walls. Anyway, when to use the nasty curse is of course very situational, but there's a lot of situations in a game like this where your damage values are quite high, but your attack values are middling. Waugh is nice for short bursts and all, but this is like a Waugh boost in reverse, debuffing the enemy to make it more vulnerable. But, of course, there's a good likelihood your own units are getting hit too. The issue is whether you care. If you're sending Black Orcs to hit stiff targets that inflict a lot of base damage back at you, they'll shrug off lots of that damage from armor alone. Boar Boys have miserable melee attack in pitched melee, but do heavily armor-piercing damage. Also, not everything in the game is Great Swords and Blackguard of Nagaron. If you're facing a low to middling armor blob, this has the potential to erase large chunks of it. Some things in this lore are risky and double-edged. Others are just annoying for the enemy. On some level, the first spell is arguably the strongest. On demand, plus 24 melee attack and plus 25% AP damage at 4 wins default, and enemy spellcaster is a grief to boot. That said, Gork will fix it when enemies are already charging through a buzzsaw of goblin archers with heavy ammo, can turn entire battles around. You just have to be tricksy, cunning, and pretty evil about it. Hopefully, you can handle that. Take care and have fun inflicting nuisances and frustrations on your foe. Remember to laugh evilly. It's good for your black soul.